I didn't necessarily understand what was going on at the time, but when I look back, I was like, okay, this is what it could be because you have people who are doing all kinds of substances, right? Either some type of drugs or alcohol, and it's isn't ever a reason to take advantage of someone, but there are times where that person who's consuming these things, they don't have the capacity to say yes, and many times they don't have the capacity to say no.
Yeah.
And there is going to be that person that's going to take advantage of their inability to say yes or no, because there's some people that no answer means a yes,
Yeah.
right? And there's some people that no answer means a no. So when you look back on that specific situation and
Mhm.
you've come full circle and you've been able to help the women that you're helping now, do you see some of yourself back then in the women that you're assisting today?
Yeah, and I just want to clarify as well. I help men too. 100% of my clients last year were male. That's not necessarily something I sought out to do, but I'm so honored and privileged to be able to support, my male clients and the the different and unique way in which they experience this abuse and in which they heal from it as well. And so while there's many similarities, there's also very important differences in anyone's healing story and in the uniqueness that comes with your own healing journey. Because while this is a universal experience, because it happens everywhere, it doesn't care about your race or your gender or your demographic of any kind, right? It can happen to anyone in any kind of setting. And so there's a uniqueness to that, but most definitely. And I think that any kind of person who does some healing work, whether like even a life coach, right? Like if you're a life coach, and that's more of the perspective that I take it from, is not from a therapeutic perspective or from a life coaching perspective. Like you are helping people do healing work, keeping themselves accountable, developing self-awareness and understanding who they are and what they want out of life. And so when you do that, you also have to make sure that you yourself are healed enough in a way, because I don't believe that we're done healing. We're constantly evolving and growing and changing, but healed enough where that similarity that will inevitably come up with your clients doesn't trigger you and send you in a spiral where you're not able to support them. But yes, definitely just that vulnerability, that before and after that comes with a traumatic event of any kind, is there's always a before and there's always an after, and you tend to define your life kind of by that point of who you were before that and who you were after that. And so that innocence, that vulnerability, it really feels like it's just taken away from you. And so seeing people go through that, there's definitely those similarities there, and that naivete that I wish we all could keep, and that feels very pessimistic when you have to say like, oh, I didn't think that this actually happened to people, right? Because I didn't know anyone who it happened to, or I didn't think it could happen to me, right? I wish that that could be true.
I will share a story about that. It was my first time living on my own, and I
Mhm.
moved in the downtown area of the city I live in. And let me tell you, Danielle, I felt like a superstar. I was renting out this condo, it was right by the water. I was like catnip to women, okay? I was just so free, right? And I loved it because it was my rules, which at that age in your 20s there are no rules. And I was going to school and I was working and I had a good job and I was going to a good school. And then I remember there's a time where someone invited me over as I was grocery shopping and I brought my friends over and it was like a party. It was like 10 o'clock. And
Mhm.
I've always made this joke now in my 30s that if anyone invites you over to your house at after 10 p.m., there's a specific reason, right? But I brought my friend and my secret password is pineapple for those who want to know and protect me. And what I did is that the person gave me something to drink. And I wasn't really a drinker there, but because I was living on my own, I started to develop that habit of drinking. Maybe within, let's say, an hour, all I remember is waking up in my place. So there's a time gap, right? And then as I woke up, I was surprised that I couldn't remember what was going on. And then I look over, see this woman there. So now I'm freaking out, right? Because I don't know necessarily what happened. And I look at some people who are going through that. Is one of the probably scariest parts that I had was I didn't know what happened. And there's someone that I really don't know that's laying next to me.
Yeah.
And you begin to wonder what the hell just happened, right? And
Yeah.
as I look at some of the women that I speak to, and a little bit some of the men, when they tell me their stories, the general consensus seems to be that their biggest roadblock in overcoming it or the source of trauma was that they were powerless to protect themselves in that situation. Is that
Yeah.
a commonality that you find with the men and the women, or maybe even in your situation that you deal with?
Yeah. My One of my biggest well, not my biggest programs, but one of my programs is called Reclaim Your Power, 3 pillars to healing from sexual trauma, because of that powerlessness. It is one of the most common themes. There's actually 5 that I talk about in that masterclass, that the 5 most common symptoms that sexual abuse survivors face. And that powerlessness is a through point for everyone that I talk to. And it's a big reason because this type of trauma as well, it's not about sex, it's not about desire, it's about power. It's about control. And so when you're on the opposite side of that and you are not the powerful one and you were not in control in that situation, it changes your perspective on the world. It changes your perspective of yourself and the way that you're even able to handle situations. And it also changes your perspective on how you are going to advocate for yourself in the future, because this is a crime. And this was something we were talking off camera that occurs. And it's a crime. And I think we need to identify and notice that. And so when that powerlessness comes, it takes away your voice, because even if you do try to go and tell people, they might say that they don't believe you. You might never even tell people this story because of that fear of that repercussion. Because if this happened and if that person was capable of doing this, then what else are they capable of doing if I speak up, if I try to get help, if I try to get that support? And so it's that questioning, that lack of control, that powerlessness that really does keep people in that rut. You're absolutely correct.